All right, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about Bitcoin again. Kind of consolidated, it's traded, fairly sideways over the last, few weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks. Which is, a lot of people are upset. Oh, why isn't it gone up all that much? Well, I mean, over the last month, it still has gone up a pretty good amount. And number two, it's also very good in that the whole Bitcoin is too volatile argument, I think, is getting kind of pushed down a little bit, and that if you look at the last week or so, it's been within $5,000, even a little less, to be quite honest. I mean, it's been, if you look at Canadian, it's been like 74, 75 for like a week pretty much. So, and again, the other thing too is that, between me making this video and putting out this video, it could go up $10,000 for all I know. So, that's another thing that I would point out, but that is possible, obviously. But this is from you today. JP Morgan adjusts its Bitcoin target to $130,000, predicting strong institutional adoption. And it's Thursday now, which was covered by Business Insider. JP Morgan states that Bitcoin's declining volatility is going to spur stronger institutional adoption. Again, that's something I pointed out. Which again, I don't think that that's really all that great of an argument. Oh, Bitcoin's too volatile. The reason why Bitcoin is volatile is that it's not manipulated to such a large degree like the dollar is, right? That's why Bitcoin is volatile. Um, but again, like I say, it is becoming less volatile. It's something people really need to understand. Professional investors will feel more comfortable holding the cryptocurrency as part of their portfolios now that its price action is less mercurial. Banking giant JP Morgan has estimated that Bitcoin could reach 130,000 in the long term if it were to match the total private sector investment of gold. Again, I think it's only a matter of time. Now, again, they say the long term. I don't know exactly what they mean by long term. Is that a year? Is that 10 years? I really don't know. Um, But the one thing I do know, and the one thing that I would bet on, is that if you were to ask someone, let's say, I don't know, 10, 20 years down the line, um, will more private sector money be in Bitcoin than or let's just say the top cryptocurrency? I mean, it's probably going to be Bitcoin, um, or gold. I mean, I would be betting on Bitcoin. And I don't. It may not even be all that close, to be quite honest. So, um, this is something that's very important to bring up too, because one of the big things you hear now is not necessarily people skeptical of Bitcoin. They just seem to think that, oh, it's gone up so much this year that they're trying to, the whole buy low, sell high thing, that they want to buy low. But what they don't understand is that um, Bitcoin can go up very fast and it may never come back down again. Like Bitcoin, like I say, it's at about 75 roughly at the time of me making this video, which is very close to the all-time high. The all-time high is, I think, 76 something. Um, it may never go below 70,000 again. It may, I mean, I would say maybe 50-50 chance, to be quite honest, maybe a little bit more likely. But I mean, it all depends. Like if it makes a big move up, I would say that that probably doesn't happen. If it makes a move down, obviously, right? So in my mind, it's just a matter of, like, if Bitcoin breaks the new all-time high, and let's say it breaks 80,000 Canadian, I would say it probably never gets back into the 60s again, at least not anytime soon, right? So again, when people who aren't in the crypto space, when they think of investing in crypto, they seem to think of it as similar to a stock, and that, oh, you don't want to get in at the high, right? You don't want to get in at the high, but I don't see why you wouldn't want to at this point, right? Because um, every credible price target I've seen is higher than where it is right now. Like the lowest price target I've seen that is actually people that have actually been credible in the past is, by the end of the year, 80,000 US, which would be like whatever, 100 Canadian. So we're looking at another 20, 25% for the rest of the year and that's the low end, right? Obviously that doesn't guarantee anything. That should be obvious to anyone, but I've seen estimates as high as like 300,000, 400,000. And this is another thing that, again, when you talk to people who aren't really in the crypto space, they seem to still, which really just kind of boggles my mind, but they still seem to take the advice of people who've been wrong this whole time. Like when you're taking advice from people about things, I don't know why people would, yeah, this guy's been wrong about this for a long time now, but I'm going to keep taking his advice. Like I really don't get it. Like I know there's some people that in the banking industry, I mean JP Morgan seems to be an exception to that, but there's a lot of people in the banking industry that have came around to Bitcoin, but I know someone personally, well, know someone who knows someone who works in a bank, and they've been saying it's going to crash for 6 months now or even more, right? And it never happened, right? Never happened. And again, these are kind of like the Peter Schiffs of the world that have been bearish on Bitcoin since it was like $100. So this is the like when you're taking advice from people about anything in general, or even when you're in like a political discussion or anything like those matters, you really need to ask people, what would you need to see to be wrong? And there's two ways that you would know that you shouldn't be listening to these people and you can tell they're wrong. The first one is that it's a question that stumps them, which is usually what happens. It's a question that stumps them, right? And that they have no answer for it. It's like with the people that support lockdowns. Well, what would it take for you to acknowledge lockdowns don't work? And they got nothing, right? They got nothing, which is just proof that they're wrong and insane. The other thing that they'll do is they'll come up with an impossible standard, right? It's like, what would you take to want to reopen? 0 cases, right? It's just this impossible standard. The third option, again, is that they actually come up with something realistic, and that's when you can trust them, right? That's when you can trust them because, like I said, if someone clearly never thought that they could be wrong on something, probably not a good idea to be taking advice from someone because it kind of proves that they don't really value being objective. Because if you value being objective and actually having an honest, well-rounded worldview, you would seek out opposing arguments. And if you're good at that, you seek out opposing arguments without even having to try. People seem to think, oh, seeking out opposing arguments is, you're a conservative and you go watch CNN or CBC. Not necessarily. I'm not a big fan of that because what percentage of people actually do that? Like next to no one. Seeking out opposing arguments is you watch people who you may agree with, but through the course of watching them, they're routinely exposing themselves to opposing arguments, whether it's debates, whether it's discussing other points of view in general. That's, I think, how you do it. The problem is, again, most people suck at doing that, right? Like CNN and CBC do that, but they're so heavily biased that they straw man like all. And that's another way too, that if you're in a debate with someone and the best argument they can come up with, or even if you're a third party watching a debate and you recognize, yeah, this guy, I mean, all he can do is come up with straw man. Again, probably safe to assume that guy's right because again, if people had good arguments, they would just bring up the arguments. So coming back around to Bitcoin, again, I've known about it for a good amount of time. I've never put money into it up until last, I think it was September, October. And again, I don't have enough into it to get rich off it either. So, but the thing I've noticed is that, again, I always lean towards the Peter Schiffs of the world prior to that, which really bothers me because I probably could have made a good amount of money, but nonetheless, I always lean towards those kind of people. And then I just started to look into this stuff more. And then it just hit me I don't know if it was a specific moment in time, but eventually it just hit me. These people are wrong. And why do I say that? Because they never actually acknowledge the other side's point of view. And again, when it comes to Peter Schiff in general, I mean, I don't mean to pick on him. I think he's very good, very, very knowledgeable in other areas, but when it comes to Bitcoin, he's just flat out wrong. And the way you know that is that he's never answered the question of what would it take for you to admit you're wrong. Because again, you can have, like, I mean, there's ways that we could say, okay, that there would be something in the world to where we could say, okay, um, something could happen to where the concept of gravity would be proven wrong. There is something hypothetically that could happen. So again, this is the thing you need to ask people. Hypothetically, what would it take for you to admit you're wrong on Bitcoin? And if they don't answer that, which someone like Peter Schiff doesn't do, you know they're wrong. If they give an impossible or some crazy answer, you know they're wrong. If they give a realistic answer, you can still trust those people. And that's the problem I have with the anti-Bitcoin people, is that they really just don't know what they're talking about. And again, the way I know that is that I'm not an expert. I'm the furthest. I mean, I know kind of how it works. I do a decent amount of research into it. But the one thing that I notice is that I see these people all the time that I clearly know more than these people, and a lot of times it's not even close. And yet they're talking like they know more than even someone like me does. And again, that's another way you can, a sign of someone who's kind of a zealot is that you can clearly recognize that they don't really know what they're talking about, but they're talking like they know what they're talking about, right? It's like socialists on economics, prime example. Um, that's a way you can, just not to trust people. So, what do I think is going to happen going forward? I made a video. I think it was on Christmas of what I think would happen to it, and I was definitely a little conservative on it. Which, again, I predicted that the price would more than double over the next year, which is very aggressive, compared to like the stock market. But um, my guess is that it's going to be in the hundreds of thousands by the end of the year. Um, does it break 200? I don't think so, but I do think that we're nowhere near the top. I definitely think we're nowhere near the top. My guess is that by the end, within the next couple years, we probably get definitely in the hundreds of thousands. My guess probably in the 200s, maybe. My guess is probably it probably peaks out around 150-ish, 150 to 200. That's probably where it peaks out this time. The next halving after that, we probably push a million, maybe not quite, probably get half a million, probably maybe five, six, 700,000. That's probably where we get to. And again, that is still massive growth. That's growth of still 50 to 100% a year, right? That's still destroying the market as a whole. So, um, again, I'm not an expert. I'm, obviously do your own due diligence, but that's just what I'm saying is that the thing that people need to understand with Bitcoin is that the people that have been bullish on Bitcoin have been right for a decade now. And again, when you're trying to figure this stuff out, the best way of going about things is simply to notice patterns. And the pattern is very clear that the people who have been bullish have been right for a decade now. The people that have been bearish have been wrong for a decade now. Right? There is well, barely, but there is no, you could have put money into Bitcoin at any time, aside from maybe that one day when it hit the all-time high. But for all we know, it could break the new all-time high within the next hour, right? There is no point in time to where you would have been down. But there's a lot of points in times where if you put money into a stock, even a good quality stock, that you could have been down, right? So there definitely is still some concerns about Bitcoin. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's way better than the alternatives. I mean, there is some cryptos that maybe you could argue are superior. The problem again is that, well, there's a lot of problems, but the big one too is that someone could come up with something that's superior to Facebook, superior to Twitter, superior to YouTube. But does that mean that more people are going to adopt the platform, especially in a short period of time? Like, no, it's not going to happen. I know again people bring up the whole MySpace, Facebook thing, but um, MySpace wasn't really innovating all that much from what I mean, I don't remember it, but um, like Facebook was constantly innovating, like, and not to mention too, Facebook had the perfect target demographic, like college kids. That is the perfect demographic, right? Um, and again, that's one example too. That's one example. Like, has anyone became a serious threat to Walmart? No. I mean, there's Costco, but they're not really the same. Um, has anyone became a serious threat to Apple? Like, not really. Again, at Walmart been around for decades and decades. Apple been around for over a decade now. Amazon. I mean, there's competitors to Amazon in other kind, like in Asia and stuff, but not in North America. So again, like when it comes like when it comes to cryptos too, I think that the perfect well, I mean people seem to want the perfect thing. They want a crypto that's the best way of storing your money, right? For long-term appreciation, but they also want something that is, very liquid and you can buy a coffee with. And that's kind of the problem that Bitcoin runs into is that it's not really great for buying a coffee with. But as a store of value, it's very good. So when it comes to cryptos too, what this the scenario that may have to play out is that there may have to be one being Bitcoin for a store of value, and maybe you can use it for large purchases maybe, and then there can be one or multiple other ones to where you can use it to buy a coffee with. Because again, I don't know if it's possible. I mean, it's definitely possible, but I don't know if it's realistic to have one that can do it all. And I do think that it will innovate too. I think people kind of underestimate just how much people can innovate when it comes to that kind of stuff, especially in a free market. Like in a free market, people underestimate just how much people can innovate. So again, as far as Bitcoin, again, JP Morgan, one of the biggest bank, it may even be the biggest bank in the States, has a price target of $130,000. Again, I don't know exactly what their time period is for that. Um, but nonetheless, even if that's over the next 10 years, to be quite honest, that's still the money more than doubling over the net because I mean Bitcoin's about 59, 60,000 US right now. So that's still Bitcoin beating, well, even somewhat comparable, right? Pretty much comparable with the S&P over the long run, right? I think the S&P average is what, like 8, 9%, 10%, depending on how you measure it, depending on if you include dividends, all that kind of stuff. Um, and again, so again, like JP Morgan, even at like long term, I would say maximum 10 years, right? So even over the next 10 years, they still have it beating the market as a whole, right? And again, this is one of, if not the largest banks in the States. So again, like the bullish signals right now, they're really talking, right? They're really talking. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already. If you want to donate, you could do that as well. Again, I would very much appreciate whatever support I can get, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.